Welcome. My name is SID AHMED BENRAOUANE, and I am a professor of management at Carlson School of Management, University of Minnesota in the US. I am also the chair of the US ISO team, Working Group 1, that has worked for the last 4 years on developing a new standard on innovation management 56002. I'm also a member of the US ISO team, Working Group 3, and this working group is focusing now on developing a new set of standards for artificial intelligence. Today, I want to talk to you specifically about Innovation Management 56002. This new standard has been published recently, and it is an interesting and important framework that ISO wanted to bring to help small and medium enterprises, big organizations, government agencies, nonprofit organizations who are interested in developing an ecosystem for innovation and are seeking some sort of common language around what innovation means and what are the practices and the best practices that could help them develop this innovation management system. So let me talk first of all about the work that we have been doing at ISO. And at ISO, what we did for the last 5 or 6 years is actually develop a set of a standard. There are about 8 standards that have been developed. Some of them have been already published. Some of them are still being discussed by different experts and different working group. ISO 5600, for instance, was published in 2020, and that's a standard that provides vocabulary and definitions and fundamentals of innovation. It helps companies and organizations focus on the terminology, and it provides a set of core language for different players that are seeking to understand what innovation means. And then there is another standard that was published in 2019, and that's about innovation partnership. How do you develop partnership? How do you engage with the outside world? What are the principles of partnership? There is another standard that focuses on assessment, and that was also published in 2019, that's ISO 56004. And then there are a set of other standards that are being discussed as of now. Innovation and IP management, intellectual property, innovation and strategic intelligence management, innovation and idea management, innovation operation measurement guidance. These last 4 standards have not been published yet, and that they are being discussed by experts. Today, the focus of this video is this standard, ISO 56002 2019 Innovation Management System. This is what I would like to talk about today, and what I would like to do specifically is to present different sections of this standard and give you some thoughts and some ideas on how best to implement it. So ISO 56002 has about 10 sections and about 1,100 lines. It has a section that talks about introductions, a section on context, leadership, planning, support, operation, performance evaluation, and improvement. The most important thing probably you would think about when you are reading this standard is that this standard follow the same high-level structure of all ISO management standard. ISO 9000, for instance, has the same structure, and this was on purpose. The reason we wanted to follow the same standard, so all standards of ISO are standardized, if you will, in terms of how people read them and in terms of their structure and what sections they provide. So let me get into the details of the sections. In section 1, there are 2 important ideas you would want to think about. The first one is the PDCA cycle. This is something that you are familiar with. It comes from the 9000 series. And then the second important section or idea of this first section is the innovation principle. Innovation principles is a new idea that we thought it's quite important for those who are engaged in innovation management. And innovation principles are something that you do not negotiate. Those are fundamentals. These are the core foundation of any innovation management system. Everybody in the organization should have the same understanding of those principles. So it's important for you at the leadership level to engage the organization in a conversation around these principles and what they mean to the organization. I am not going to get into all the details of these principles, but let me share with you a few of them that I believe are important to address. Number one is the value realization. Any innovation management system has to have a goal and has to have an objective. The objective of an innovation management system is not to make people feel or to follow the trend. The goal of an innovation management system is to achieve, realize, add value, and have outcome. Whether this value is tangible or non-tangible, the most important thing you needed to keep in mind is that you have to have a goal in mind when you establish your innovation management system. Innovation does not happen in a vacuum. Innovation is the work of innovators, but more importantly, the impact of leadership and how leadership thinks about the future. An innovation management system will be successful if you have top leadership that are future focused, and more importantly, they are able and willing to engage the organization and project the organization into the future. Culture is another important principle, and innovation management system is not about processes and a set of KPIs and a set of goals. It's about how you can change people's mindset, how you can change people's views, how you can change people's behavior, and how you can impact the everyday behavior of people that you have so they are able to understand what innovation means to the business and how they can engage with innovation. And then the other principle that I wanted to talk about in this video is the management of uncertainty. Innovation by definition is managing uncertainty. You do not engage in management when you are 100% sure about the outcome. That's improvement, that's continuous improvement. Innovation, you engage in it when you are not sure about the outcome. So it's very important that you train your employees, you train your organization, you train your innovators to be comfortable in managing uncertainty, in managing ambiguity, and being able to manage and take risk. So let me now start with section 4. In section 4, you have a lot of ideas, but I'm going to pick only a few. Number one, the need to understand the context in which you operate. You will not be able to establish your innovation management system without a good understanding of the context in which you operate. And you understand the context in which you operate through different analysis. You can conduct a SWOT analysis, you can conduct a pistol analysis. The goal is to know about the impact of the economic environment, the political environment, the social environment, the cultural environment, and the customer experience that you wanted to provide to your employees. The demographics, for instance, are quite important. The demographics of your customers are also important. So whatever you do before you establish your innovation management system needs to go through this analysis of the context so you are able to understand and to tailor the different management system that you are going to put together. Understanding the need and the expectation of interest parties. Interest parties, whether they are customers or they are partners or they are employees, it's very critical to you before you start putting together the innovation management system that you understand the needs, the aspirations and the expectations of different parties surrounding your organization. And then, of course, you have to spend some time in identifying and defining the scope of the innovation management system. What does my innovation management achieve in my organization? What are the goals? What are the objectives? What are the limitations? To what extent I can do this and I cannot do that? These are the questions that you needed to address with your team, with your top leadership, with your organizations, to come up with a specific scope, to a common agreed upon a scope on what innovation management can and cannot do. And then, of course, you needed to get into the planning processes and the different operations that we will be talking about when it comes to establishing the innovation management system. Section 5 focuses on leadership, and specifically the leadership role in implementing innovation management system. So the commitment of top leadership is critical to the success of innovation management. You won't have a good operational, effective, and efficient management system without a good engagement and commitment from leadership. Top leadership provide the innovation vision, the dream, the goal, the objective that you want to achieve in innovation. Top leadership provides the innovation policy. Top leadership engage in communicating the innovation policies, and top leadership helps the organization to figure out the value realization of the innovation management system. Leadership also provides the innovation strategy, and when it comes to innovation strategies, we make a distinction between 4 types of innovation strategy: incremental innovation, breakthrough innovation, disruptive innovation, and transformational innovation. Incremental innovation, it's a step-by-step innovation. It's a baby step innovation. These are the small things that you add to your product, to your core, in order to be able to improve and to innovate and to add more value to your customers. What's the difference between BMW 5 Series and BMW 7 Series? Those are incremental innovative additions that the company adds in order to make the product more attractive and, of course, to keep and retain the market in which it operates. And then you have a breakthrough innovation. Breakthrough innovation is usually a radical innovation. It's a new innovation that you have not seen in the past. If you think of the iPhone and you compare it, for instance, to BlackBerry, or you think of BlackBerry and you compare it to previous phones, you can say that the iPhone and the BlackBerry were a radical and a breakthrough innovation. A better example that we have all tried would be probably Airbnb, which has came up with a new concept that has challenged an old industry such as the hotel industry. And then you have the disruptive innovation. Disruptive innovation is also a form of radical innovation, but usually it's the product of a player in the market who is willing to test limited aspects about a new product, and eventually that product will disrupt the incumbent, or they will disrupt the people who are established in that industry. And then you have the transformational innovation. In the transformational innovation, we're looking at the long term, and the transformational innovation is a form of innovation that will transform the entire industry or the entire market. You can think, for instance, of social media as a transformational innovation because it transformed the way we conduct business and the way we live our lives. When you talk or when you think about innovation strategies, it is very helpful to assign those different strategies a time frame. We talk about H1, which is Horizon 1, the short term, H2, which is Horizon 2, the midterm, and H3, which is the Horizon 3, the long term. Transformational innovation, for instance, usually it's an H3 innovation. Incremental innovation, usually it's an H1 or Horizon 1 short-term innovation. Then comes section 6. In section 6, we're talking primarily about the planning, which is the how-to. How are you going to establish your innovation management system? So you need to think, first of all, of in what way and what's the method that will allow you to become more innovative in your organization. Are you going to be focusing on internal and organic growth? You will be working only with your innovators, or you are thinking about mergers and acquisitions. And when you think about mergers and acquisitions, are you thinking about horizontal acquisitions, vertical acquisitions, or related acquisitions? Those are questions that you need to address in the planning process. In the planning process, you also need to talk about the structure of innovation. Is it going to be centralized team or decentralized team, or some sort of an agile ambidextrous organization that will allow you, again, to work on two types of organizations? And then finally, you need also to focus on the innovation portfolio. And in the portfolio, you want to make sure that the portfolio, or whatever you have in your portfolio, aligns with the strategy of the organization. And more importantly, that you have a balance of different types of innovation. You do not want to work only on incremental innovation, or work only on transformational innovation, or work only on radical breakthrough innovation. You would want to have some sort of balance, 70%, for instance, working on incremental innovation, 20% working on breakthrough innovation, and about 10% working on transformational innovation. This is the trend or the best practices that usually you see in organizations that are focusing on innovation. Section 7 of the standard talks about the support. And when we talk about the support, we're talking primarily about the people. How do you empower people? How do you motivate them? How do you retain them? How do you choose them? How do you recruit them? How do you lure them into your organization? We talk also about the time. How do you invest in the time and the time off to help your innovators focus on their product? We talk also about knowledge. What are the different competencies that you needed to have in the organization so innovators are able to work? They have the skills, they have the knowledge, they have the attitude that allows them to provide this type of product. And then finally, the funding issue is also a fundamental issue. You need to dedicate funds, you need to dedicate budget to innovation. Innovation and innovators cannot work without funding, and it's important for your organization to provide that. Section 8 is the core of the standard 56002 because it addresses operations. It talks about innovation initiatives, it talks about processes, and it talks about partners as well. In the innovation processes, it's critical that you teach, you learn, and you help your innovators and you help the organization understand this process. The process of innovation starts with identification of opportunities. What are the opportunities that are open to my organizations? Where can I innovate? What are the challenges that I have seen in the market, either my customers or my partners are struggling with, and that I can probably work on and use it as an opportunity to develop a new product. So you start with your opportunities, then you create the concept, you validate the concept, you develop the solution, and then you deploy the solution. The most important idea about this section, and specifically about the process of innovation, is that this process is not linear. In other words, you do not start from 1 and you get to 5. You start from 1 and you move to 2, and you may go back to 1. This is what we mean by an iterative process. It's a process in which there is a discussion. It's a process that is living. It's not a dead process where you go simply from 1 to 5. You need also to link these different processes with other processes in the organization. For instance, with marketing processes, with the sales processes, with the customer experience processes, with the R&D processes. It's critical for you to create these links between these different steps and other processes, so you are able to enrich the innovation process. You are able to create this dynamic and to create this defragmented process that is at the core of innovation and innovation management. Then section 9 talks about the performance evaluation. This is similar to what you have in other ISO 9000 standard. Innovation does not happen simply because people want to engage in it. Innovation happens because there are certain metrics that drive people's behavior, and those metrics, they give you some feedback and signals on what is working and what is not working. You can choose whatever works for you in terms of metrics. Choose your own KPI, choose your own metrics, your own indicator, and then work on it and do it well. You don't have to follow someone else's KPI. You can come up with your own KPIs, but once you stick or once you choose to the KPI, the specific KPI, stick to it and measure it well. We thought probably at the standard we can help and we can provide some ideas on metrics. So we grouped our metrics in 3 categories, what we call input-related indicators. This could be number of ideas suggested, number of ideas implemented, value creation potential, or impact on the market. And then you've got the throughput-related indicators. It could be the speed of experimentation, how many days, how many hours it takes you to move an experiment through the pipeline. The learning and development, time to profit, time to market, engagement, and brand awareness. And then finally, the output-related indicators. And those could be patent, could be IP work, could be user satisfaction, or even actually brand recognition could also help in this metrics. The most important idea, as I said, is that you don't have to use all of these metrics. You don't have to use someone else's metrics. You can use what works better for your culture, what works better for your employees, what works better for your context. But once you choose, once you settle on a specific indicators, do it and do it well. This is the visual that we have at the standard. If you go to the standard 56002, you will find, first of all, that innovation starts with an intent. It starts with a challenge, it starts with an opportunity, it starts with top leadership identifying and defining what innovation means to them and what are the challenges and the opportunities that they can take advantage of in order to be able to innovate. Then it ends with value realization. You don't engage in innovation simply because you want to engage in innovation or you want to beat your competitor by providing or presenting a good, fancy innovation system. But actually you design an innovation system because you want to have impact. You want to realize value, you want to add value, whether the value is tangible or non tangible, you need to have that definition. And then between the intent and between the objectives or the value realization, you have the defragmented process that I explained in the previous slide. Of course, you won't be able to have an innovation management system unless you have put the context, and you talked about the context, you talked about the leadership, and then you talked about the PDCA template that I mentioned in my first slide, in which you can have the planning, the support, the resources, the performance evaluation, and the improvement. This is the ecosystem, if you will, of an innovation management system. And this is what ISO has presented in this standard, which is a comprehensive system that helps you to come up with a new innovation management system. Some final thoughts about ISO Management 56002. First of all, it's a guidance. It's not a requirement. It's not a mandate. It's not something that you have to. It's a set of best practices that experts put together in a nice framework, easy to read, easy to implement, specifically if you are familiar with ISO practices. If you have used ISO 9000 standard or any other ISO standard, you will find that the bridges and the links between management innovation 56002 and other standards are quite easy. It also addresses the innovation management system, not the innovation per se. So we're not talking in this standard on how to regulate, how to standardize innovation or innovative thinking. This is something that you cannot do and you do not want to do. What we are talking about, we're talking about the set of practices that you wanted to create so innovation is sustainable in your organization and it is breathing and it is living as a living organism inside your organization. Now, in the future, ISO may have another standard that would be 56001. And number one in the practice of ISO is always devoted to standards that are mandatory, to standards that are requirement. We are not there yet, but we may in the future be at that level where the international practice, if you will suggest this type of innovation management standard. I have had the great pleasure and honor to work with my co-author and colleague, James Harrington, who is very known to your organization. And James Harrington was the chair of Working Group 3, the working group that produced the management assessment, the assessment of innovation. And I was in charge of Working Group 1, which produced the innovation management system. I am happy and glad to announce that James Harrington and myself will be publishing a book on this specific standard. The title would be the ISO 56002 Innovation Management System, a practical guide for implementation and building a culture of innovation. The book is set to hit the market early 2021. And it will be published by Taylor and Francis Group. It's been a pleasure talking to you virtually to share with you some thoughts and some experience about innovation management standard, the new standard that was published in 2019. If you have any questions or you have any comments or you want to get in touch with me, please do not hesitate to contact me. My email address is on this slide. And I will be looking forward to talking to you. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and I will see you online soon.